Some books teach you wisdom, some teach you history, and some make you wonder why humanity keeps handing ink to the most dangerous person in the room. Today, we're opening 33 of the most vicious books in history: poisoned pages, demon catalogs, fake texts that fueled real hatred, and novels blamed for chaos. Read them? Maybe. Trust them? Absolutely not. 1. Shadows from the Walls of Death. This is the rare, dangerous book where nobody is exaggerating for dramatic effect. Shadows from the Walls of Death was created in 1874 by Michigan doctor Robert Clark Kedzie, and its mission was actually noble: warn the public that fashionable Victorian wallpaper could be poisonous. Great idea, slightly awkward execution. Kedzie filled the book with real wallpaper samples, many of them colored with arsenic-based pigments, meaning the book designed to warn people about poison was itself a tidy little poison album. Victorian homes loved bright green wallpaper because apparently nothing said elegant family sitting room, like walls dusted with toxic chemistry. Libraries later destroyed most copies because keeping arsenic pages around felt less like preservation and more like slowly murdering the reading room. Imagine opening a book and the plot twist is respiratory failure. 2. Codex Gigas, also called the Devil's Bible. The Codex Gigas is less of a book and more of a medieval object that looks like it should require a construction permit. It is enormous, weighing roughly as much as a very determined child, and it contains a massive collection of religious, historical, medical, and practical texts. But let's be honest, the reason everyone remembers it is the full-page portrait of the devil sitting inside like the world's worst bookmark. The legend says a monk, condemned to be walled up alive, promised to write the entire manuscript in one night to save himself. Then, realizing that was not a reasonable deadline, he allegedly called Satan for help. Scholars think one scribe probably worked on it for years, which is much less metal but far more believable. Still, one monk, one night, one demon is unbeatable medieval marketing. 3. The Sorrows of Young Werther, Goethe's. The Sorrows of Young Werther was supposed to be a tragic novel about impossible love and emotional collapse. Instead, it became the 18th century version of a viral crisis. Young men across Europe copied Werther's clothes, his melancholy pose, his romantic misery, and, according to alarming reports, even his tragic final act. Authorities in several places became so nervous that they restricted or banned the book, because apparently a sad fictional man in a blue coat had become a public safety hazard. The panic helped inspire what later became known as the Werther effect, the idea that widely publicized self-destruction can trigger imitation. The book did not hypnotize Europe, of course, but it hit a raw nerve in a generation that suddenly decided heartbreak should come with a costume, a philosophy, and terrible life choices. 4. Necronomicon. The Necronomicon is the funniest nightmare in literary history because it is completely fictional and somehow still convinced people to go looking for it. H.P. Lovecraft invented it as a forbidden grimoire for his horror stories, giving it a fake author, fake history, fake translations, and enough fake scholarly dust to make readers whisper, "Wait, is this real?" That is not just world building, that is a prank with footnotes. The book became so famous that occult publishers later produced real books using the name. Because if humanity can turn anything into merchandise, it will absolutely turn an imaginary cursed text into shelf space. Lovecraft made a prop, and the prop escaped into reality wearing a robe. The Necronomicon never summoned ancient gods. It summoned collectors, conspiracy believers, and people who desperately want fiction to have a locked basement. 5. Grimoire of Pope Honorius. The Grimoire of Pope Honorius has one of the boldest titles in occult literature, because it basically asks, what if the Pope wrote a demon manual? Historically, that attribution is not reliable, but the scandal is the point. The book's reputation comes from mixing Christian prayers, church authority, ritual language, and demonic conjuration into one very uncomfortable package. For readers in earlier centuries, that combination was not just spooky, it was spiritually explosive. It felt like someone had taken sacred language and used it to open a trap door under the altar. Whether people believed the text was truly papal or not, the idea alone was enough to make theologians sweat ink. It is a grimoire built like a scandal machine. Holy names, dark rituals, forbidden instructions, and a title that practically kicks down the church door yelling, "Bad decisions have arrived." 6. The Catcher in the Rye. The Catcher in the Rye is not an evil book. It is a novel about grief, alienation, teenage confusion, and a boy who badly needs help, not a secret criminal spell disguised as literature. But its reputation became dark because it was connected, in public imagination, with several infamous killers, most notoriously Mark David Chapman, who murdered John Lennon and was found with the book. After that, the novel became a cultural suspect, as if Holden Caulfield had somehow crawled off the page and started whispering instructions. That is unfair to the book, but revealing about us. People love blaming art because blaming chaos, obsession, and mental breakdown is messier. The vicious part here is not the text itself. It is the way unstable readers can turn a book into a mirror, then mistake the reflection for a command. 7. The Book of Soyga. The Book of Soyga is the kind of manuscript that looks at scholars and quietly says, "Good luck sleeping." It belonged to John Dee, the Elizabethan mathematician, astrologer, advisor to Queen Elizabeth I, and man who somehow made talking to angels part of his professional schedule. The book contains Latin text, strange magical material, and huge coded tables that have baffled readers for centuries. Dee reportedly became obsessed with understanding it and asked supernatural beings about its meaning during his angelic sessions. According to legend, he was told that only the Archangel Michael could explain its deepest secrets. Another dark tradition claimed that anyone who decoded the whole thing would die after a fixed period. Is that true? Almost certainly not. Is it the perfect academic horror story? Absolutely. It is a cursed spreadsheet with Renaissance candlelight. 8. Justine. Justine, by the Marquis de Sade, is one of those books that makes you understand why 18th century authorities kept reaching for the prison keys. The novel follows a virtuous young woman through a world where cruelty, hypocrisy, exploitation, and power are treated with brutal philosophical coldness. It shocked readers not because it contained one scandalous scene, but because its entire moral universe seemed built to spit in the face of decency and then explain itself at exhausting length. Napoleon reportedly despised Sade's writings enough that the author was imprisoned again and later confined in an asylum. When your book makes an emperor say, "No, society is not ready for this man with a pen," you have entered a very specific category of literary disaster. Justine is vicious because it turns suffering into argument and then refuses to look away. 9. Munich. Manual of Demonic Magic. The Munich Manual of Demonic Magic is a 15th century grimoire that feels less like ancient wisdom and more like a medieval villain's private notebook found behind loose stones in a tower. Many magical texts at least pretend to offer healing, protection, divine knowledge, or spiritual discipline. This one leans hard into darker material, demonic conjurations, illusions, coercive magic, and attacks against enemies. The vibe is not seek harmony with the universe. The vibe is, how can I weaponize invisible forces before supper? What makes it fascinating is how practical it tries to be. Medieval people were not only afraid of demons. Some imagined bargaining with them, commanding them, and using them like extremely dangerous unpaid workers. Of course, trusting demons for project management is not a plan. It is a resignation letter to common sense. 10. Tamino's Hell. Tamino's Hell is a Japanese poem surrounded by one of the most durable modern reading legends. If you read it aloud, something terrible will happen. The poem itself is unsettling, surreal, and filled with painful imagery, but the famous curse belongs more to urban legend than documented supernatural law. Still, the myth is powerful because it understands human weakness perfectly. Tell people, do not read this out loud, and suddenly everyone becomes a stage actor with zero survival instinct. That is how cursed text folklore works. The danger is not only in the words but in the dare. A poem becomes a ritual because people treat it like one. Your rational brain says, "This is probably nonsense." Your nervous brain says, then why did the room suddenly feel colder? And that tiny shiver is the whole business model. 11. Malleus Maleficarum, also called the Hammer of Witches. Few books on this list caused damage as direct and horrifying as Malleus Maleficarum. Published in the late 15th century, it helped systematize witch-hunting paranoia, especially the idea that women were naturally vulnerable to demonic influence. This was not harmless, creepy folklore. It became part of the intellectual machinery behind accusations, interrogations, torture, forced confessions, and executions during the wider witch trial era. The book treated fear as evidence, rumor as suspicion, and suspicion as enough to ruin a life. That is not demonology. That is a justice system with its eyes removed. The horror here is not witches flying through the night. It is men with authority, paperwork, theology, and absolute confidence turning panic into procedure. The book claimed to hunt evil, but its legacy shows how easily evil can wear official robes. 12. Utopia. Thomas More's Utopia sounds like a book about perfection, because the title eventually became the word we use for an ideal society. But open the actual text and things get much stranger. More's island society has communal property, strict rules, regulated travel, controlled households, religious supervision, and a level of civic order that feels less like paradise and more like being politely monitored forever. Scholars still debate whether More meant it as a serious proposal, a satire, a thought experiment, or an intellectual trap with nice Latin furniture. That uncertainty is exactly why the book is dangerous in an interesting way. Humans keep dreaming of perfect societies, then discovering that perfection usually requires someone with a clipboard telling everyone how to live. Utopia is not vicious because it commands violence. It is vicious because perfection, when enforced, starts growing claws. 13. The Long-Lost Friend. The Long-Lost Friend began as a Pennsylvania Dutch folk magic book filled with charms, prayers, cures, protections, and everyday supernatural problem-solving. On the surface, it sounds almost cozy, like a rural handbook for people who wanted their cows healthy, their enemies quiet, and their luck slightly better. But in 1928, it became tied to the Hex Hollow murder in Pennsylvania, where Nelson Raymeyer was killed by men who believed he had placed a curse on them. They thought destroying his copy of the book might break the spell. That is where folk belief turns from strange to deadly. The long-lost friend did not commit murder, obviously. Paper does not crawl off a shelf with a weapon. But fear, illness, superstition, and desperation can turn a harmless-looking manual into the center of a real-life nightmare. 14. Picatrix. Picatrix is not your daily horoscope quietly blaming Mercury for your bad emails. It is a massive medieval text of astral magic rooted in Arabic magical traditions and later translated into Latin that teaches readers how to work with planets, spirits, talismans, timings, symbols, and ritual ingredients. Some of those ingredients are exactly as unpleasant as you are imagining, and possibly worse. The book's ambition is what makes it feel vicious. It does not merely ask what the stars mean. It asks how to pull power from them, bottle it into objects, and use the machinery of the heavens like a cosmic vending machine. Medieval magic often tried to make the universe negotiable, and Picatrix is one of the boldest examples. It turns astrology from "you may have a difficult week" into "prepare the ritual materials, we are bothering Saturn." 15. Voynich Manuscript. The Voynich Manuscript is vicious in a very refined way. It does not poison you, curse you, summon demons, or accuse your neighbor of witchcraft. It simply refuses to be understood, year after year, century after century, while intelligent people lose their dignity trying. Written in an unknown script and filled with strange plants, odd diagrams, bathing figures, and astronomical-looking illustrations, it has defeated code breakers, historians, linguists, and internet detectives who arrived with confidence and left muttering into tea. The plants do not match normal botany. The text appears structured, but nobody can read it. It looks meaningful enough to hurt. The whole manuscript feels like a medieval prank created by someone with beautiful handwriting and no mercy. Its true curse is not death. Its curse is making smart people say, "I think I almost have it," forever. 16. Daemonologie. Daemonologie is terrifying not because it was written by a peasant who saw a weird shadow near the cows, but because it was written by a king. King James VI of Scotland, later King James I of England, published it in 1597, arguing seriously about witches, demons, spirits, and the threat of magic. That mattered. When an ordinary man fears witchcraft, it is a local panic. When a monarch writes a daemonology book, paranoia gets a crown, a printing press, and political gravity. James had already been involved with witch trials in Scotland, and his book helped give intellectual respectability to fears that could destroy real people. The result was a culture where suspicion could become official action. It is one thing for the tavern loudmouth to blame a storm on witches. It is another when the king says, "Interesting theory." 17. Oera. Linda book. The Oera. Linda book is what happens when a fake ancient manuscript refuses to stay in the harmless hoax department. It appeared in the 19th century claiming to reveal ancient Frisian history, wisdom, and mythology. Scholars came to view it as a forgery, but unfortunately, scholars say this is fake has never stopped people who desperately want fake things to be true. Later nationalists, racial mystics, and Nazi-era occult enthusiasts became fascinated by it because it seemed to offer an invented ancient past they could twist into ideology. That is where the book becomes vicious. A ridiculous manuscript becomes dangerous when people use it to feed fantasies of racial destiny. The Oera Linda book is not frightening because it is ancient. It is frightening because it is not ancient, and still people treated it like a holy receipt for nonsense. 18. The Orphan's Story. The Orphan's Story is a Spanish manuscript from the early 17th century with a reputation so unlucky, it sounds like publishing history written by a ghost. The novel was written by Martín de León y Cárdenas, a Spanish cleric who later became Archbishop of Palermo, but the manuscript remained unpublished for roughly 4 centuries. Around it grew the story that people who tried to bring it into print kept dying before the job was finished. Is that proof of a curse? No. It is proof that humans see repeated bad luck and immediately start adding thunder, candles, and dramatic music. Still, the legend is irresistible. A lost colonial-era manuscript sits in archives, dodging publication like it has hired supernatural lawyers. Most writers fear rejection. This book allegedly made editors fear mortality. That is a very aggressive literary strategy. 19. The Lesser Key of Solomon, also known through the Goetia. The Lesser Key of Solomon is one of the most famous demonological grimoires in Western occult tradition, and the Ars Goetia section reads like a formal directory of hell's middle management. It lists 72 demons, giving them names, ranks, seals, and supposed powers, as if the infernal world needed an administrative handbook. The tone is weirdly organized, which makes it even more unsettling. Humanity looked at chaos, fear, and evil spirits and said, "Fine, but can we at least catalog them properly?" To modern readers, it is ritual theater, folklore, religious anxiety, and occult imagination woven together. To earlier believers, it could feel like a tool for commanding dangerous beings. The central absurdity remains undefeated. If your plan requires ordering demons around, maybe the plan has already failed at the planning stage. 20. The Turner Diaries. The Turner Diaries is one of the clearest examples of a book becoming dangerous in the real world, with no supernatural fog required. It is a racist, extremist novel that imagines political violence through the eyes of white supremacist ideology, and it became influential among violent extremists. It was connected to several acts and plots, most infamously as inspiration for the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995, which killed 168 people. There is nothing stylish or mysterious about that. The danger is propaganda. A story designed to make hatred feel heroic and mass violence feel like destiny. That is what vicious writing can do when it reaches people already looking for permission to harm others. Some books frighten readers with monsters. This one helped convince real people to become monsters. That is far worse than any fictional curse. 21. Compendium Maleficarum. Compendium Maleficarum, published in the early 17th century, is a demonology and witchcraft manual packed with accusations, rituals, devilish imagery, and illustrations that made fear feel visible. That visual element matters. When a book draws the thing people are afraid of, panic suddenly has a face, claws, and a very bad public relations campaign. The images of witches, demons, pacts, and sinister ceremonies helped readers imagine a hidden world of evil operating behind normal life. And once people can picture the monster, they often start looking for it in neighbors, widows, outsiders, rivals, and anyone already vulnerable. The book did not create witch persecution by itself, but it fed a culture where suspicion could become violence. It is basically a horror comic accidentally treated as an evidence file by people with power. Terrible genre confusion. Terrible consequences. 22. The Book of Thoth. The Book of Thoth belongs to Egyptian legend, and in those stories it is not merely a book. It is forbidden divine knowledge in written form. The text supposedly grants power over the gods, animals, stars, and hidden structure of the world. Naturally, because ancient stories understood dramatic pricing, anyone who tries to possess it pays horribly. In tales about Set Nakamwas, stealing the book brings suffering, punishment, and the very clear message that cosmic secrets are not library materials for ambitious fools. The legend is powerful because it touches a fear older than most libraries. Knowledge can elevate you, but it can also destroy you if you grab what you are not prepared to carry. The Book of Thoth is the ultimate forbidden download. Yes, it may contain the secrets of reality. No, your mortal brain probably should not click accept. 23. Diary of a Drug Fiend. Aleister Crowley's Diary of a Drug Fiend arrived in 1922 already wrapped in scandal, because Crowley himself was basically a moral panic wearing a cape. The novel explores addiction, excess, collapse, and spiritual recovery through Crowley's occult worldview. But newspapers and polite society were not exactly reading him with calm academic curiosity. They saw him as dangerous, corrupting, blasphemous, and possibly the human form of a bad influence. So the book entered public life like contraband with a dust jacket. Its vicious reputation comes from the combination of taboo subject matter and Crowley's own outrageous persona. Whether readers saw it as confession, warning, propaganda, or decadent nonsense, it became part of the legend of the wickedest man in the world. Sometimes the book is not the whole fire. Sometimes the author walks in carrying gasoline and a grin. 24. The Grand Grimoire. The Grand Grimoire, also called the Red Dragon, has one of the darkest reputations in occult literature because it is associated with summoning powerful infernal spirits and making pacts with them. That is already enough red flags to decorate a castle. Unlike mystical texts that wrap everything in symbolism and spiritual discipline, this grimoire developed a reputation for being blunt, transactional, and dangerously ambitious. It imagines the supernatural world almost like a business deal, except the other party may be Lucifer and the fine print is not exactly consumer-friendly. Historically, it belongs to the messy world of printed grimoires, folk belief, fear, fraud, and fascination. But its mythic power is simple. Humans have always been tempted by shortcuts. Power without patience, wealth without work, knowledge without wisdom. The Grand Grimoire says, "Sign here." And every sensible instinct screams back, "Absolutely not." 25. Voodoo Sorcery. Grimoire, 20th century books marketed as voodoo sorcery manuals became vicious in a different way, by distorting a living religion into horror shop fantasy. Real Haitian Vodou is a complex religious tradition shaped by African heritage, Catholic influence, community, music, ritual, spirits, healing, resistance, and survival under brutal historical conditions. Sensational grimoires often stripped all that away and sold outsiders a cheap nightmare version. curses, dolls, graveyards, black magic, and spooky exoticism for readers who wanted fear with a travel brochure accent. That did real cultural damage. These books did not merely entertain. They helped spread racist and misleading ideas about Haitian religion and African diasporic traditions. No demon had to appear. The poison was already there. Bad research, colonial imagination, and publishers realizing that prejudice can be profitable if you put a skull on the cover. 26. Stega, better known as Steganographia. Steganographia by Johannes Trithemius is one of the strangest texts in the history of occult writing and cryptography. Written around 1500 by a German abbot and scholar, it appeared to describe magical communication through spirits, angels, and strange ritual language. For centuries, many readers treated it as a dangerous occult work. Then scholars showed that much of it also functioned as hidden cryptography, with secret messages concealed beneath the magical surface. That is a magnificent act of intellectual mischief. Imagine disguising code systems as spirit magic so effectively that generations argue about whether you wrote a demon manual or an encryption textbook wearing a wizard hat. The book became controversial because early modern Europe was not relaxed about monks, secret writing, and spirit communication appearing in the same sentence. Steganographia is vicious because even its genre refuses to confess. 27. The Golden Bough. The Golden Bough by James Fraser is not a cursed grimoire, but it did something almost as dangerous. It gave modern readers a giant theory machine for religion, myth, ritual, magic, sacred kings, sacrifice, and human belief. Published in expanding editions from the late 19th century onward, it became enormously influential in literature, anthropology, psychology, and occult circles. The book is massive, confident, and very Victorian in its appetite for explaining the entire human species before tea. Its danger is indirect. Fraser's comparisons inspired artists, writers, mystics, and alternative spiritual movements, but some readers treated its patterns like secret keys to reality. When humans start seeing hidden rituals everywhere, they can become poetic, brilliant, or completely unbearable. The Golden Bough did not create dangerous cults by itself, but it helped popularize the idea that ancient magic was hiding under modern life, waiting to be reactivated. 28. Galdrbach. Galdrbach is an Icelandic magical manuscript from the early modern period, full of runic staves, charms, protections, curses, and spells that mix Christian elements with older magical traditions. Icelandic grimoires have a special atmosphere. Isolated farms, brutal weather, long winters, and the suspicion that your neighbor might be solving property disputes with symbols and spite. Some entries are protective or practical. Others are openly hostile, aimed at enemies, thieves, illness, bad luck, or whatever problem the writer felt needed supernatural customer service. The book shows that folk magic was not always neatly divided into good and evil. It was personal, anxious, defensive, and sometimes petty in a deeply human way. A sick animal, a bad harvest, a rival across the valley, and suddenly somebody is drawing a rune like they are filing a complaint with the universe. 29. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion is one of the most destructive forged books in modern history. It falsely claims to reveal a Jewish conspiracy for world domination, recycling older anti-Semitic lies into a fake political document. It was exposed as a fraud, including evidence that it plagiarized earlier material, but truth did not stop its spread because conspiracy hatred does not operate on evidence. The Protocols fed anti-Semitic movements across the 20th century, influenced Nazi propaganda, and helped justify persecution in the minds of people who wanted a target more than they wanted reality. There is no fun curse here, no haunted ink, no mysterious demon in the margins. The viciousness is clearer and uglier, a lie printed like proof, repeated like scripture, and used to make real people less safe. Few books have done more damage by being false. 30. The Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin. The Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin promises one of the most intense projects in Western occultism. Purification, prayer, isolation, discipline, and eventual contact with the holy guardian angel, followed by authority over spirits. This is not light a candle and improve your Tuesday. This is an 18-month spiritual boot camp, depending on the version, with your entire life reorganized around ritual focus. Aleister Crowley famously attempted the operation at Boleskine House in Scotland and later claimed the process was interrupted, leaving the place spiritually disturbed. Whether you believe that or not, the psychological intensity is obvious. The book asks for obsession, solitude, purity, secrecy, and total commitment. Even if no demons appear, your normal life is already packing a suitcase. Abramelin is dangerous because it turns self-transformation into a marathon through the haunted basement of the mind. 31. The Sworn Book of Honorius. The Sworn Book of Honorius is a medieval grimoire wrapped in oaths, secrecy, and the feeling that you are not supposed to read the next page unless you have already made several questionable decisions. Despite its sinister reputation, the book is not simply cartoon devil worship. Much of it aims at divine vision, angelic knowledge, and spiritual authority. But that did not make it safe in the eyes of medieval religious culture. A private manual promising supernatural access outside normal church structures was exactly the kind of thing that made authorities nervous. The sworn element gives it forbidden club energy. Knowledge is restricted, guarded, and dangerous if mishandled. It feels less like a casual book and more like a locked chamber with rules written on the door. The first rule is secrecy. The second rule is probably, do not annoy heaven. 32. The Book of Lies. Aleister Crowley's. The Book of Lies is what happens when an occultist writes a puzzle box, throws away the key, and then acts like your confusion is spiritual progress. Published in 1913, it is full of paradoxes, jokes, mystical fragments, sexual symbolism, numbers, riddles, and chapters that seem designed to make rational readers stare at the wall and reconsider literacy. Crowley enjoyed language that contradicted itself, snapped expectations, and forced the mind out of ordinary patterns. Depending on the reader, that is either profound, pretentious, brilliant, unbearable, or all four before breakfast. The book's viciousness is intellectual. It does not threaten your body. It threatens your confidence that sentences are supposed to behave. You open it expecting answers, and instead get a masked magician whispering, "Maybe the confusion is the door." Very helpful, Aleister. Truly normal. 33. The Key of Solomon. The Key of Solomon is one of the most influential grimoires in Western occult tradition, a ceremonial magic manual attributed to King Solomon, though not historically written by him. That attribution matters because Solomon's name gives the whole thing ancient, royal, biblical authority. It is the difference between some old magic notes and the legendary wise king allegedly left instructions. The book includes rituals of purification, magical tools, seals, planetary timing, prayers, and procedures for dealing with spirits. It tries to make the invisible world manageable like a workshop project with incense and existential risk. Later grimoires borrowed from it, imitated it, argued with it, and built entire traditions around its style. Its power is not only in the content, but in the branding. If a book says Key of Solomon, readers feel like it might unlock hidden doors. The question is what stands behind them. So now the courtroom is open. Which book on this list was the most dangerous? The poisoned one, the demon manuals, or the fake political garbage that actually helped ruin lives? And more importantly, which vicious book did we miss that deserves to be dragged into the light next? Drop the title in the comments, hit like if this list made your bookshelf feel suspicious, and subscribe before history writes something worse.